series on state-sponsored hacking. We have with us Professor Dickie George from Johns Hopkins University. Brief introduction, Dickie graduated from Dartmouth in 1970, all right, joined the NSA immediately thereafter, and spent the next 41 years with the NSA. About 5.5 years ago, he joined the Advanced Physics Laboratory at Johns Hopkins University, and today he's here with us to talk about intelligence and espionage. Dickie?
Thanks very much, Bill. It's great to be back here. I love going back up to Hanover. It's wonderful times. There's the obligatory, what you're going to hear is my view of things, my opinions. These have been vetted by public affairs, but doesn't mean that they believe that they're true. It's just it's my view on things. And since my memory goes back a long way, most of those public affairs people have no idea what happened back then. So it's a good life. So to start off, I feel like I've been a target of espionage for about 47 years. Doesn't mean they were successful. It just means I've been a potential target. The good news is today there are a lot more people like you all who are targets of espionage every day. So welcome to the club. It's a fun club. Information assurance, which is where I spent my life, it really is all about protecting information. It means that you have information that someone wants access to do something to it. And you want to protect that information, and that's the name of the game. If you think about a threat in an adversary, you can characterize that adversary in 6 ways. You talk about the resources they have to spend and the capabilities they have. Those are somewhat interchangeable because if they don't have a capability, they may be able to buy the capability from somebody else. There's the intent and motivation, what they want to do and why they want to do it. There are a lot of different groups that might want to do the same thing, but for very different reasons. If you think of a hospital database of information, a disgruntled employee might want to just mess things up because he's mad at the hospital. Organized crime might want to go in there and encrypt the database, so they want access to it to encrypt it so they can ransom it back to the hospital. A foreign nation state might want to go in there and just implant a tool so that they can do something at a chosen time if they want to. A terrorist might want to just go in there and make people die. So there are a lot of different reasons people might want to have access to that. And you've got to address those various reasons in your game. Now, if you think back to the old Cold War, and I'm usually talking to college kids. This is great because most of you lived through that Cold War. It was a fun time. It was characterized by 2 things. The espionage was number 1, and the technology race, which is broken up into nuclear weapons and the space race. So those were the 2 things. And you can cartoon it in a sense by saying you were looking at someone who had the best guns and the best spies. And that was what you were looking for, the best guns and the best spies. Funny thing used to happen back then when I was in elementary school. About once a month an alarm would go off and we'd all dive under our desks because the threat was someone was dropping an atom bomb on our school. So it's a little school in Connecticut. Probably not a great target. But the interesting thing about that was that everybody understood the threat and they knew how they were supposed to react to the threat. And about 2/3 of the kids in my class, when they went home, they had bomb shelters in the basement. And the bomb shelters were stocked because the government told them how to build that shelter, how thick the cement had to be, how much food and water they had to have in it, how blankets, what had to be there to protect them, how long they had to be protected for. And the government told them what they were doing to prevent this attack from happening in the first place. Now compare that to today. What kind of advice is the government giving you on the cyber threat? And what kind of assurances are you getting that nothing's going to happen? Don't worry. Probably not much. So I have an interesting story that will kind of bring that to light. I was talking to a very senior guy at the Department of Defense one time, and he said, this was in the late 90s. He said, I have nuclear weapons. I said, yes, sir. He said, I might have to use those nuclear weapons someday. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, So when I see that cyber attack coming, and I thought, this guy's thinking he's going to see ones and zeros coming through the air like it's a missile, and that's not the way it works. And so I said, sir, what do you do when it looks like that cyber attack is coming from Ohio? And he kind of just stared up at the ceiling. And, you could say, well, is he thinking, why is Ohio attacking the Pentagon? Or if I take out Ohio, it's a swing state, so it's fair. If I take out Ohio, does that send a message to the world? But I think what he really was thinking was, I've got the biggest guns, and you're telling me I don't know how to use them. The game has changed, and he had a real sad look on his face as he realized that having the biggest guns didn't mean he was the toughest guy anymore. And that's a profound difference in the world. I heard a talk that General McChrystal gave a couple of months ago, and he said, there's only one superpower, and it's us. And no one on Earth is ever going to take us on head to head in a traditional war again. That means we've got to learn how to fight a different war. You saw the recent results in the NATO competition, where in the cyber competition we came in 13th in NATO, which is a marked improvement over last year when we came in last. That's not where we want to be. That's not where we need to be. And that's in NATO. So when I started in NSA, there was an old guy. We were a bunch of kids. We were a bunch of 22-year-olds. There was an old guy sitting in the back of the room. That probably means he was about 30. So we were having a good time. The second day, he got up at the end of the day and stood up and said, I want you guys to know that the Russians know who every one of you are. They're targeting you. They're looking for you to make a mistake. As long as you don't do anything wrong, you're okay. But if you give them an opportunity, they're going to take advantage of that. And over the years, I have seen that happen. Not to anyone I know, but to people we hear about. That as long as you play the game right, you're fine. If you give them an opportunity, they will take advantage of it, and you will become owned. So when they set up the rules for how we play this game, it was set up back in the day of teletypes, where you were typing out information, it would go over the air, and it would get printed out at the other end. And CIA was supposed to get the information at rest, and NSA was supposed to get the information in motion. It doesn't really make much sense in today's world, because there's not much difference between at rest and in motion today. That information is sitting in computers that could be moving at one moment, rest in the next, and moving again. It's an interesting world. So let me talk a little bit about the kind of defense we put together, because we knew the Russians were looking to get strategic information. That was their aim, to get strategic information about the United States, and our aim was to keep them from doing it. So we developed crypto, and the information was encrypted. Information assurance tries to make life hard for the adversary, and making it hard means forcing them to play the game they don't want to play. So remember, you have resources, capabilities, intent, motivation, access, and risk aversion. Access, what kind of access do they have to the information? Risk aversion, what kind of chances are they willing to take? An example of how we built devices back then. We had a handheld radio which was used at the front lines. It was called Vincent. Some of you may remember that. It was a device that was first designed in 1957. We studied it for about 12 years. In '69, we decided we could start building it. They made 4 models as they kept finding problems and fixing them. And it was actually fielded in 1976. So that's only 19 years to get it from design to the field. It's still in the field 40 years later, and it's never had any changes. That was the goal. You make something right. You know the old story about the 2 hunters and the bear? Does everybody know that? Okay, so there are 2 hunters out there in the woods, and they've only got 1 bullet left, and a big bear jumps up in front of them. The guy says to his friend, make it a good shot. And he said, I will. And he turns around and shoots his friend in the leg. Takes off running. The guy says, what are you doing? He said, well, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you. So that's almost the game in cyber. Back in the old days, our crypto was designed to outrun the bear. Today, the game is very much designed for people to outrun the neighbor. If your system is better than your neighbor's, you're probably not going to get hit unless you're a real target. If you're a target of opportunity, you're fine as long as you're more protected than somebody else. But if everybody's equally protected, then they're going to look for the most lucrative target.